BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Black Box Ned 88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And just a couple quick announcements before we start. We're going to be talking about some things related to the Zodiac killer today, and of course the murder of Cheri Jo Bates, as you see here in the title. But if you're somebody who can't get enough of Zodiac material, I highly recommend you check out Drew Beeson's channel and follow along with his show, The Zodcast, Zodcast, The Zodcast. I've been listening to an episode every day, and I love the stuff. Also, there's a new set of videos that have been put out by Rick Hanson, Rickhanson, Rick Hanson. He has some new videos on the Zodiac killer. I would like to give a shout out to YouTube user Brett H., who had an excellent video on the Cheri Jo Bates Zodiac killer connection, and we will be talking about some of the material from that in this upload here, Brett H. And the image that you see here in the picture is from ZodiacCyphers.com. Also, thank you to Richard and everybody over there who has contributed things, including people in the comment sections. Thank you to ZodiacCyphers.com. Okay, so to begin, I would like to give just one more shout out to YouTube user Vic, who provided this idea for an upload. And I did not save the exact wording of Vic's request, but it was something to the effect of about how I talk about how I don't believe that Cheri Jo Bates was a genuine Zodiac killer victim. But could I put forward a case that Cheri Jo Bates was indeed a Zodiac killer victim? And we used to do that on this channel. It was a segment that we did called Devil's Advocate, just like it sounds. I mean, you would play Devil's Advocate, put forward a case for both sides. We would make two uploads where one would be discussing, okay, this is in favor of, and then the other one would be this is in favor against. The first time we did that was on the case of Billy Joe Jenkins, a murder story from the United Kingdom. But if we're going to talk about Cheri Jo Bates, I would just like to say that, actually, before we begin, if you have any other ideas for topics that you would like covered on the channel, please drop something in the comment section below. I mean, we're doing as many of your requested topics as possible these days, so please share any of those. But to get into the subject material for today's case, once again, I do not necessarily believe that Cheri Jo Bates was a genuine Zodiac killer victim. In fact, I think that there's a lot of evidence to go against Cheri Jo Bates being a Zodiac killer victim, but let's see if we can find something by exploring the opposite direction. Now, the first and foremost thing we can say is the Zodiac killer confessed to this. And as you'll see here in the image, there was a confession made in 1971. I swear I must have read that 1,000 times, that the confession to the Bates murder took place in 1971, but I didn't truly process it. Do you ever have those experiences where you're familiar with something, but it doesn't quite register in terms of significance, because that means, well, 1971, that's 2 years after 1969, the bulk of Zodiac activity. And I was listening to a video on Cheri Jo Bates. One of them, I think it was just an automated reading of the Wikipedia article. It sounded very similar to that, in a computer voice. And they're even talking about how the bulk of Zodiac activity is in 1969. And, I mean, we do have Lake Herman Road taking place in December of 1968, but all of the canonical crimes in the Zodiac killer mystery take place within a 12-month span. 12-month time span. I mean, it's really less than 12 months, because it's from December of 1968 to October of 1969. It's within a year, but it's the actual amount of time is just around 10 months of Zodiac activity. Very short, but that's one of the reasons why people believe that there is credibility to the confession in the Bates murder. First and foremost, theoretical. The Zodiac said very clearly that he had committed crimes that he was not reporting under the Zodiac name, or that he was going to continue to commit crimes and change the way that he was doing it so no one would ever figure it out. And this is some of the things we mentioned during the Santa Rosa hitchhiker slayings, and Robert Graysmith was trying to nail Arthur Lee Allen for that. And if you also want to go into another direction, I mean, Graysmith was also trying to pin the murder of Cheri Jo Bates on Arthur Lee Allen, as well as a possible attempted abduction of a Riverside student 3 weeks after Cheri Jo Bates in November of 1966. That was near the end of November. Cheri Jo Bates was, of course, murdered on October 30th of 1966. She was stabbed multiple times. A very vicious attack. What happened was, I mean, if you have some familiarity with the Zodiac killer mystery, this will all just sound like very, very repetitive to you, but she's coming out of the RCC library, that's Riverside City College, and she is attacked. She first goes to her car, which has been disabled. The distributor has been tampered with, and the coil has been removed. So her car wouldn't even start. And one of the things that I heard on another recording, like even just some of the things we talked about in the past on Black Box Online Radio, was that the door was actually even found open ajar, like Cheri Jo Bates's green Volkswagen Bug had her door open ajar. And what you see in the Bates confession letter is the killer even talked about how he was able to get her to go along with him to even a short distance, saying that her car is not working, and he offered her a ride, and she accepted. But the whole point is, how do we know that this is Zodiac activity? First and foremost, like a lot of people believe that the Zodiac was able to evade capture by changing the pattern, knowing that if the serial killer were to use the same pattern over and over again, eventually people were going to figure it out. So the Zodiac killer changed the pattern. And also, I think there's a certain sense of value in what I guess we can call the epicenter theory. First, you have the murder of Cheri Jo Bates, October 30th, 1966. Then from October 30th to Lake Herman Road, December 20th of 1968. That is just over 2 years. So 2 years. Then from Lake Herman Road to Blue Rock Springs on the 4th of July, 1969, 7 months. The crimes are getting closer and closer together. And then, of course, we would have 2 more months until Lake Berryessa, and then 2 weeks to the Paul Stein murder in Presidio Heights. Like, the crimes are getting closer and closer together in terms of a time frame. And it's possible, as Sharon Hagan put it, that this is a killer who is growing in confidence. And it's also possible that with the murder of Cheri Jo Bates, the reason why that murder was committed with many stab wounds, we're talking being stabbed over 40 times, and it's I think I was listening back to something, and it said that her jugular vein was also cut, so very, very bloody and gruesome murder. The Zodiac killer would have had to have been very sloppy, very uncalculated, or jumping into the situation in a very brash and dangerous way. Also a high risk of getting caught. And during our discussions on the Golden State Killer, as well as the psychology of serial killers, we've mentioned frequently about one of the things that serial killers are very much aware of, way more so than the average person, is the ability to have this type of predatory instinct to know if they keep doing something, they will get caught. If they keep committing these crimes in this particular way, they're going to get caught. So you could have the murder of Cheri Jo Bates in 1966, and then other murders perhaps happened and weren't reported in the same way, or you would have somebody who is like, oh crap, I can never do that again, or else I'm going to get caught. So for 2 years, this individual is waiting and trying to reshape the MO, reshape the strategy. They're going to be committing the murders in a different way. But, we're going to be playing devil's advocate, so I'll save some things for counter argument at the end. So what I would say about that is, while Lake Herman Road is quite different, you have somebody sneaking up on some teenagers, firing some gunshots, and then disappearing. That could have been done as a different type of thrill killing, which was also a lower chance of getting caught. Because once again, you can read up on this stuff for yourself. You could also find our uploads on the neuroscience of serial killers and the psychology of serial killers here on Black Box Online Radio. And I will go ahead and include a link in the description box. But I said I was going to talk about some things from the YouTube channel that was run by Brett H. And he had some very, very interesting things to say about how there are certain linguistic clues in the Zodiac killer mystery. Both the Zodiac killer and the murderer of Cheri Jo Bates use the term twitch and squirm, and they both contain misspellings. And the murderer of Cheri Jo Bates spelled twitch, Twiched. The Zodiac killer spelled squirm, Sqwirm, but they both said twitch and squirm. They used these words in the same sentence. But also, I would think, though, the more valuable thing that is shared in Brett H's upload is that he says this is his own contribution. If you look at the Bates letter, which is up here, the confession of somebody saying that Cheri Jo Bates was murdered by this individual, It says by, and then there is a blank. What goes in the blank space? And much like Kelly Marshall said, everybody expects that the blank spaces are where the name is supposed to go. Although she said that about the 340, no, sorry, the Z13 cipher. She said that one. But that'll clue her in on the Z340, meaning that you're supposed to look for the dashes, and the line is actually something that is other than a name, or something other than a name is supposed to go there. What should go there? By knife. It's not meant to be a name. And that's Brett's own observation, as he said in the video. By knife. And we also have the famous Halloween card, by rope, by knife, by gun, by fire. That is mentioned a couple times in the Zodiac Killer mystery. It's also one of the possible solutions to the 340 cipher, as well as being written on the car door at Lake Berryessa. And at Lake Berryessa, the Zodiac Killer drew the Zodiac symbol, then wrote Vallejo, the dates of the Zodiac crimes, 12/20/68, 7/4/69, September, spelled SEPT, 27, September 27th, 1969, 6:30 p.m. by knife. And there is no p.m., it just says 6:30 by knife, trying to read off this as accurately as possible. But for Lake Berryessa, the dates do change from numbers to letters. It says 12/20/68, 7/4/69, SEPT, September 27th, 1969, at 6:30 p.m. by knife, meaning that this is really what you're supposed to be paying attention to. And the reason why you see all these things circled in red here is that is another piece of evidence put forth by not only Brad H., but also mentioned on ZodiacCiphers.com, where we got this image about how the Zodiac frequently began the sentences with the letter I, saying, I like killing because it is so much fun. The Zodiac was full of himself. That was Don Hardin's intuition about this, unless Don Hardin is actually the Zodiac Killer. But there's a very frequent usage of the word I. I don't necessarily think that that is the biggest thing. Something more valuable is another 3 letters were mailed, and these are the more famous one, perhaps even more famous than the Bates confession letter, and they say, Bates had to die, there will be more. And they were signed with a Z, and it's not just an ordinary Z. It's one that has a particular shape to it. There's almost a kind of curl, and then the letter Z is very clearly written underneath this little curly figure. Some people think that it's the number 32, and they point to the fact that Arthur Lee Allen lived at 32 Fresno Street, but it doesn't look like a 32 to me. It looks like a Z with a little curl on top. But what I can say is, from reading the stuff from Gary Stewart and Michael Wachtel, while I think that they're both frauds, they do show that other people have written this way in the past. I mean, Michael Wachtel is I was about to say expert. He's a handwriting guy. I don't really think too highly of those guys, but they did show that other people have written their Z's like that. And even if we're just going to look at this, number 1, Zodiac confession. Number 2, the Zodiac claimed that the pattern was not going to be the same. There's not going to be one consistent pattern with all of his crimes, and the Zodiac is confessing to crimes that are not consistent. And then finally, we have letters mailed saying Bates had to die, there will be more, and they are signed with a Z. Now, I said we were playing devil's advocate. First and foremost, this is not devil's advocate right now for a second, being 100% dead serious. No matter who the killer was, they had an enormous amount of familiarity with this case. Whoever the Zodiac Killer was, either they murdered Cheri Jo Bates or they studied this. I do believe that with every fiber of my being. The Zodiac Killer really seems like somebody who was reading up on other true crime cases, even Jack the Ripper. I do think the Zodiac Killer studied Jack the Ripper, learned a lot about other serial killers, and I do think the Zodiac had an enormous amount of familiarity with the murder of Cheri Jo Bates. And the letter Z comes to us perhaps from Detective Story magazine, where there's a story that says, this is Z speaking, and then that could have very easily been the signature here, which then morphed into Zodiac, perhaps connecting some dots together with the name from Zodiac Watches, saying, this is a badass name that I want to have. And it also, the Zodiac chose to have the name Zodiac, and giving himself the nickname. And we did an upload about that, talking about some of the motivations for that. However, I would just say, though, that in terms of Bates had to die, there will be more, and signing the letters with a Z. Another point that's mentioned by Brett H. is the Zodiac Killer did something that he calls forming hybrid letters where it's almost like one letter is morphing into another letter. And not to quote Gary Stewart extensively in this one, his claim was that Earl Van Best Jr. was taking the letter E and the letter V and like doing that, turning them into a hybrid letter of E and V put together, and then that looked like a letter Z if you were to bend them in certain ways and put them on top of each other. And there was also that guy who I just call the one who did the Death Note voice when he was talking about this claim. He said something very similar, although he didn't use the term hybrid letters. What he actually said was multiple letters are stacked on top of each other. Like if you were to draw out the letter F, then you could put an E on top of letter F, and then the F would be hidden inside the E, and then you could put a letter B on top of F. If you just imagine a capital F, E, and B, and then letters could be concealed within each other, and this is what the Zodiac killer was doing. So there could be a lot of linguistic clues in that. Another linguistic clue is that both of the killers often say the word shall, which is not necessarily super common. But in terms of laying forward a case, number one, there are fingerprints that were taken from the Bates crime scene. And I was like, all right, well, you want to match the fingerprints we have from the Bates crime scene? How about comparing them to any of the other crime scenes that have fingerprints? I mean, obviously the police have done this and they do not match. And somebody left a very interesting comment about this earlier today on the channel. And I was going to save this one for the Q&A that we were going to do for the next month. We do a monthly Zodiac Killer Q&A on this channel, and that's a great reason to subscribe to Black Box Online Radio to keep up with this stuff. And the thing to say about that is that they were saying, I'm almost certain the Zodiac Killer lifted fingerprints and placed, fake fingerprints at all the crime scenes. And I was like, really? And I got on Google, and I was reading up on this, and you can just find a world of information about people who lift fingerprints off of items, and then they can put them onto other items, transferring one person's fingerprints from a surface, like from surface A to surface B, just like that. You can read up on this stuff, and we will talk about this more in our next month's Zodiac Killer Q&A, because that's kind of going down a whole nother issue. I mean, we'd have to talk for maybe 5 minutes just on the fingerprints alone. And to get back to the murder of Cheri Jo Bates, a lot of evidence has been left behind. But think about what the Zodiac Killer did say in the letter, that he puts 2 coats of airplane cement on his fingertips so he doesn't leave prints behind. Is it possible, because the Zodiac Killer knew that he had left behind fingerprints as well as the torn watch band from the murder of Cheri Jo Bates? It was a Timex watch that was torn. And what we can say about this is, did the killer know that he had left too much evidence behind, and then decided that if he were going to continue to commit murders, he would have to do it in a more skillful and methodical way, hence the rise of the Zodiac Killer? Or perhaps other crimes were committed using a different MO. And if we didn't have the Golden State Killer sitting in jail right now, I would probably think that that would be impossible, except for the fact that we do have the Golden State Killer in jail. So it is possible. And I say that because if you were to tell me that the East Area Rapist, the original Night Stalker, and the Visalia Ransacker were all the same person committing over 100 crimes or something in the state of California, I would say, that's some far-fetched, wacky serial killer conspiracy theory. Oh, wait, what do you mean? That's true? Oh, okay, take it back. And once again, as always, with true crime, if the evidence does support it, we're just going to have to accept that, hey, it's not the theory that I believed to be true, but it turns out this theory is more likely to be true. So, I mean, it's about the truth, not about what any person believes individually. Okay, I said we would do a little bit of counterbalance and a little bit of counter-argument just at the end to wrap things up here. The first and foremost thing I would say against Cheri Jo Bates being a Zodiac Killer victim is, number one, the amount of stab wounds is much more significant of a revenge killing rather than a methodical target, unless you're going to have the Zodiac Killer be obsessed with Cheri Jo Bates for a particular reason. But when we say revenge killing, we mean somebody like an ex-lover. Also, I mean, until we prove that the Zodiac Killer actually transplanted anybody's fingerprints, the fingerprints from the Bates crime scene versus the Zodiac crime scenes are different, right? We have them on file. Also, if we're going to say that Cheri Jo Bates could possibly be a Zodiac killer victim, the letters were signed with a Z. They were not signed with the word Zodiac. I mean, that is something that perhaps most people probably wouldn't think about. Also, by knife is the actual solution, that this is an allusion to the Tim Holt Wheel of Death. Once again, it doesn't say by knife. That can also be put into the assumption category. As far as I being used very frequently, you see the thing circled in red that we had. Well, what else should the person writing the letter say? It was done by me. The person is using the letter I to refer to himself. Using hybrid letters, as we mentioned with some of these other examples that people were talking about, there are other examples of people doing similar things. That is not exclusive to any one individual person. Those are just very similar writing patterns and creating letter shapes. Overall, though, a lot of people believe that the person who murdered Cheri Jo Bates was somebody very close to her. Maybe an ex-boyfriend, ex-lover, maybe somebody who had a lot of familiarity with Cheri Jo Bates as opposed to being the target of a serial killer. And we didn't even get to the desktop poem yet in this one. But yes, of course, a desktop poem was carved into a desk that was moved into storage, and a custodian found it, and it was signed with the letters R.H. Well, once again, I'm not 100% convinced that the desktop poem has anything to do with Cheri Jo Bates. Number one, does it mention Cheri Jo Bates by name and say, I killed Cheri Jo Bates? No. Everything else is an assumption. So there are a lot of assumptions, and let's not kid ourselves. The Zodiac killer did appear to confess to all sorts of crimes. The Zodiac killer also confessed to planting a giant bomb that got swamped out in the rain or something, or he got swamped out in the rain. The Zodiac said a lot of things, a whole lot of talk, but as we said, very few crimes. A crime spree that only lasted less than 12 months, 4 canonical crimes from December of 68 to October of 69. What do you think? Do you think that Cheri Jo Bates was a genuine Zodiac killer victim, or do you think that she was not? But what is the big response to the challenge question? Do you believe that the Zodiac killer studied this case very carefully? And why or why not? And also, if you have any ideas for things that you would like to hear about on this channel, please drop your idea in the comment section below, as well as you can always hit the like button and subscribe, and I will see you on Instagram, BlackBoxNed88, Instagram TV for the bonus podcast. Until next time.